Hello, adventurers! You are all very welcome to the MicFlayers podcast, coming to you from the furthest reaches of the Far Realm via the Mindflayer telepathic network. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host, Martin O'Dwyer.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Are you good today, Martin? How are things?
Yeah, pretty solid. Very excited. We just released our first episode on YouTube and Spotify. Listen now.
We did. We're just so our fans know, we're available on YouTube and Spotify.
Indeed.
If you're more a fan of the audio and not the video, don't like looking at these mugs. I'm pretty excited about that. Actually, speaking of in terms of like episode releases, Martin, happy Christmas, man. Because technically this will come out on the 25th of December.
Oh, happy Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope we're all having...
our Christmas episode that isn't a Christmas episode because there's nothing Christmas themed. The one, I will say this, there is one, if you want to like follow a really long thread, there is one aspect of this episode that will be very slightly Christmas. And the only reason is because Christmas for some people is about family, about presents, about a nice big meal. For others, it's about Doctor Who. And in this case, we have one of our friends in our previous campaign played a blue dragonborn sorcerer who was basically a Doctor Who character. And we're actually going to tell a story in this podcast about that Doctor Who-esque, his most Doctor Who-esque moment of our previous campaign. So if you're willing to walk the 10 miles of that thread, it's a Christmas episode.
I'm pretty sure he did quote a Doctor Who Christmas episode, the Christmas special episode at the very end when he did the thing.
When he did, quite possibly.
Yeah. I remember what he said. I think I took it down, but no, I didn't, because as we checked, I have my old notebook from our first campaign, as I said with Conor earlier, and I had a look at it there, and I have exactly before the story we're going to tell, and immediately after, and a blank page with the title of the story we're going to tell. Because not so hot at the note taking when things are happening and exploding.
It was it was one of those moments where it kind of. I don't blame you for not taking notes. Normally, Martin, you are the best note taker in the group by a long shot. But I mean a long shot. But yes, Mike has his own system. It's mostly hieroglyphs. I don't understand it, but he does, so that's all that really matters, I guess. You're normally our best note taker, but obviously in the heat of the moment, and it was a very heated moment. Couple sessions. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 sessions long. This entire action-packed.
I think it was about 3. 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's just the battle little part. We'll just jump into it because it is a little bit long. And feel free to interrupt me, Martin, and make past comments, because otherwise it will just be me telling a story for a very long time. I don't want to be talking for the entire podcast.
You are a DM, so it's kind of in your wheelhouse.
Well, yeah, I don't shut up. We all know that. So this is a story I've dubbed The Battle of Narveen. I've not written it like a story. I just have some bullet points. So as a setup, in our party, Martin was playing a Vengeance Paladin. Dan was playing a dwarf rogue. Mike was playing a blue dragonborn sorcerer, like I said. My fiancée Tara was playing a wood elf monk. And our friend Aaron was playing a high elf arcane trickster. The guys had gone on a quest to the Underdark to recover something called a Salika stone, which was a sacred gem that had been taken from Sage's village. That's Tara's character, the monk. It had been taken. You guys had been on a weeks-long journey, at least out of the game, we'll say. I think it only took a few days within game to get to the city of Narveen, the hidden city, which is a drow settlement in the Underdark. And one of the people you were meant to meet up with upon getting there was a formerly player character, now NPC, because his player had left the group, named Saren, who was a drow as well, and was actually a prince of this city that had been exiled in his early years. And you guys were meant to meet him kind of outside the city so he could show you how to get past the hidden part, the secret part. When you discovered that he had been abducted You found some of his boots and belongings, and with a quick, I believe, locate object spell, you found one of his other
Yes.
boots.
I've never been more grateful for a second level spell slot than I have for that entire arc where I basically cast locate object at every opportunity.
Yep. It really helps when you're wandering through the endless Underdark and finding
I
dangers
think
left, right, and
the
center.
game changer was when I read it again and realized you could choose a type of object and not just a specific object.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
you could be like, how many? And in this particular case, you found one of his boots and you held it and said, "I want to locate object on other boots like this nearby." And you found
No,
this other boot, which is
it was his mask I used it on. He had this crazy
oh
like
yes,
clockwork
sorry,
mask from a like a Dishonored style mask.
yeah, it was
And
very much Dishonored
yeah,
style.
I think I think we had like just his boots. We were like, oh, and I think his weapons might have been there as well.
He had left some gear because
Yeah,
he'd been
some gear.
taken in a bit of a scuffle
But
by Mindflayers.
it was basically everything that we could normally think of to try and look for him. And we were all kind of like just racking our brains. It's like, oh, yeah, that mask. And then we used that in the mask. And then that kind of led us along in the direction of, I think that was where, through that kind of fungus forest we were in. And then up.
You were in a fungal forest in the Underdark.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was you cast a spell, you got a ping, you're like, oh, something's this way. I think his mask is this way. You followed it just in time to see what is essentially like a little shuttle, like a little space shuttle. For those of you who might be a little bit adverse to sci-fi in their D&D, I apologize for this entire episode. But this is where we're going.
It was
It's a
pretty
very
awesome.
it's a very fantasy meets sci-fi episode. And what had happened was he had you saw this shuttle just zooming off into the darkness over an underdark sea. So an entire saltwater sea located entirely underground. And you thought, oh shit, we got to like go and get him. But then you also thought maybe we should go to the city of Narveen and see what we suss that out as well first. You did manage to find it. And this is a bit of a side note to the main story that we're telling. I did want to tell the story of how you guys first tried to infiltrate Narveen. Because it's one of my prouder moments, and I got to give a special thanks to Matt Colville for giving me the idea. So in the weeks leading up to this, you guys had a bag of holding, and Mike, who was Shamash, our sorcerer, had the spell Reduce Enlarge.
Great spell.
Enlarge,
Really
reduce.
great spell. Enlarge, reduce.
Really useful spell. Yeah, really useful spell. And what had happened was you had gotten into the habit of Shamash casting it on himself, in which case him and everything he is wearing grows to a size large. Each of you crawling into the bag of holding and waiting there because it says in the description of the bag of holding that the bag of holding has 10 minutes of air. And you guys said, right, we can all hop in and we'll be grand for 10 minutes. And he can fly somewhere or teleport somewhere and it'll bring us all with him because we're in a pocket dimension in an item that he's holding. Which is a really clever use of it. But honestly, as a DM, I was getting pretty sick of it because you were using it left, right, and center.
Yeah.
So you guys were outside of Narveen, which is kind of on an island in the middle of a lake in this huge cavern in the Underdark. And what happened was the arcane trickster said, hey, I can cast invisibility on you, Shamash, our dragonborn sorcerer. You can enlarge, and we'll all get into the bag, and then you can cancel enlarge reduce, so you shrink back down, but we're all already in the bag. Then you can cast fly on yourself and fly over the town, and no one will see you because you're invisible, because she is in the bag of holding, still concentrating on that spell. And it was a good use of things. It was really, really good.
An excellent combination of spells, I must say.
Oh yeah,
that's
really
such a great idea.
Use, including really clever when you consider that you had multiple concentration spells, but knew you could cancel the reduce and enlarge once everyone's in the bag anyway. Cast a different spell, get to the location, cancel invisibility, and then reduce and enlarge or enlarge again to let everyone out of the bag, and then you're all inside.
Yeah.
So this happened.
The majority of the part of your spellcasters, you can get up to some crazy shenanigans.
There is some room for some serious abuse.
Sorry, Conor.
You're okay for now. And so you guys hop in. Shamash takes off. And he starts flying into the town. He's flying over all the buildings, and I'm there, and I roll a few dice. And you guys don't know what I'm doing, but what I'm actually rolling for is to see who's running out of breath, and I'm checking everybody's everyone's their ability to hold their breath because everyone has different con scores. And I'm like, okay, I think Enna, who was the Arcantrix who cast invisibility, had a relatively low con score.
Yeah.
She can hold her breath for a very short period of time. Like literally a minute plus your con modifier, I believe is the rule. So she was actually one of the first ones to lose consciousness inside the bag. And I described to Shamash that all of a sudden his invisibility fades. So you are now visible and flying over the city at a regular size, but you're still a 7 foot, 8 foot tall, whatever, dragonborn. People might spot you. So he's like, oh crap, okay, I'll immediately go to the nearest rooftop and duck in behind a chimney or something like that, where I can't be seen, and I'll cast enlarge and I'll let everyone out of the bag. And everyone piles out, and Enna is indeed unconscious. And I think a couple other people were gasping. I think you were all gasping for breath at this point.
It was a close thing.
Yeah. And you guys are all kind of scratching your heads, and you're like, what happened? I mean, why did she pass out, or why did she drop to 0, or whatever, And I'm there, and you all look at me, and I say, the bag of holding has 10 minutes of air. And you're like, yeah, 10 minutes of air. That's only been like 2 minutes. I say, the bag of holding has 10 minutes of air total. Which is, again, an idea I got from Matt Colville. And
thanks,
you guys
Matt.
are like, fuck you, DM. And I was like, it's a really good system, but I like the idea that maybe you can do it, that you can do the trick with the bag of holding a few times, but just remember that a bag of holding, when it's made, has 10 minutes of air, and after a while, it will stop having air. So you can do it a couple times, and you got to be clever with how you use it, but eventually that little trick will run out.
Unless you have a Warforged party.
Unless I think they still have to breathe, don't they?
No. Warforged do not need to breathe as far as
they just go into shutdown mode.
No, they just don't need their machines.
Also, or if you're an Air Ganassi, you can just hold your breath indefinitely.
Or dead.
Or dead. So yeah, that was a little sidebar, but that was one of my favorite moments. So that actually ended up in a fight kicking off inside the city, where you guys had some pretty clutch moments trying to escape the city that was now well aware of your presence. All these surface invaders. So after that happened, you guys decided, right, well, that all went to shit very fast. Let's go and see if we can find Saren, and maybe he'll have a better way for us to get into the city. You guys travel to outside of Derby, back to that Underdark ocean, that Underdark sea you came across, and you actually had a foldable boat, or a folding boat.
Yeah.
So you deployed it at its largest size, hopped onto it, and started sailing it across this great expanse of black and water. You reached the far side, and after some searching, you guys came across the home of the Mindflayers, which was basically a Mindflayer capital ship or mothership, whatever you want to call it. That had, I'm gonna jump back and forth between a lot of like sci-fi and fantasy terms, so bear with me on this. But you would jump back and forth between. It had like essentially warped or slip spaced or hyperdrived
into... It had like materialized within the wall.
Sorry?
It had like materialized within the cavern wall, right? That was it, wasn't it?
Not in the wall, but in the cavern, yeah.
Oh.
It basically had... The jump drive had basically brought it... It basically has the ability to cast teleport as a spell. And plane shift. And it basically had done that and appeared inside of this cavern, which is big enough to house it, but it couldn't go anywhere then. Or it could, but it was kind of like the entire bottom half of it was scraped up because it came in and it skidded all along the ground, and it tore out all the lower decks of this enormous capital ship. Think like Imperial Star Destroyer type deal. Those
are the pointy ones for non-Star Wars fans.
Yeah, they're the triangles. Think big triangle. Big triangle with squids in it. And you guys decided, okay, we're going to go on board and see what I can see. And it's a very creepy thing. You see all these, they have all these like shuttles that are hovering around and patrolling. You guys go on board. The lower couple decks are completely inoperable. There's no lights on. Most things aren't working, and there's a lot of damage. But you manage to find a cupboard, which you discover is actually an elevator. And the way to operate it, and the way you operate most things in the Mindflayer technology that I come up with, I kind of based it a lot on Stargate Atlantis, for those who are familiar. And
it did have very much that kind of vibe, that kind of biomechanical, Jesus.
Yeah, the Wraith ships.
Yeah.
In that. And there was these little gooey things, these kind of gooey panels on the wall, and you can stick your hand into it, and it's like sticking your hand into a brain, and it melds your nervous system with the ship's nervous system, and you can then think commands into it. And it's very easy to do simple stuff. You want to open a door, you want to make an elevator go up or down. Those are all pretty straightforward commands, no problem there. So you managed to get that working. You made the elevator go up. You arrived on an actual operational deck with lights on, and everything looks pristine, and all the walls are kind of slimy and metal, but also like organic. And you came across, well, a couple things happened. I think you killed a couple of MindFlayers, and you found this huge room filled with pods where they were storing people that they had captured for later consumption.
I think there was some like vivisection going on as well, if I remember rightly.
I think they were operating on someone or learning something about someone.
Yeah.
And they had hundreds of drow, because they had been looking for Narveen as a city for a long time, because they know, hey, we know there's a drow city down here somewhere. That's a huge source of food for us. We really want to find that drow city. But obviously Narveen is hidden, and even though they had a lot of drow captured, the drow would do a thing where they had these bite down breakable teeth like cyanide that they could bite down on that would poison their whole system. So even if a MindFlayer, even dead, if a MindFlayer tried to consume the brain of them, they're basically eating a poison brain. So they can't get the knowledge of where Narveen is. You guys went in. I'm a little hazy on the details, but you scouted around inside for a while, and you were about to leave.
Go on.
If you remember, by all means, chime in, because I'm a little hazy on the specific details of what happened in the ship this time around.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else for a second, but if I remember rightly, what happened was we were sneaking around the ship, and at one point we had to split the party. There was like a lower deck. There was like a hole to a lower deck, and then that was it. We one of the people we found that we came across in the pods was the only other blue dragonborn that we had ever encountered. Karina. And
well, if I may chime in,
yeah,
the way you found that out, and this is important for the story later on, is as you were leaving, or you found a console and you're like, oh, there's thousands of pods in here. We need to find one drow in a whole host of drow. So you started saying to yourselves, right, okay, let's put our hand into the gooey panel, and let's ask it. And I believe this may have been Drunin that asked this question. So our dwarf rogue, and he stuck his hand in, and he said he asked the question mentally, how many drow are on this ship? And I gave a random number. I'm like, there are 784 drow on this ship. And then he goes, okay, well, that's obviously no help. How many living drow are on the ship? And he said, there is one living drow on this ship. And you're like, okay, look, that's it. We know that's got to be Saren. And then when that happened, Shamash took it upon himself, because in this setting, Shamash is the last of the blue dragonborn. All the other dragonborns are still around, but the blue dragonborn had wiped themselves out in a war hundreds of years prior, and somehow Shamash was the last of his kind. Again, very Doctor Who in its style. But he stuck his hand in, and on a whim said to himself, so asked the system, how many blue dragonborn are on this ship? And he got the response back, there is one blue dragonborn on this ship. At which point he went, oh, shit.
Yeah, that was a big one.
There's another one of me here. There's another one of my people. We can't leave the ship. We got to do something here. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he got Saren.
Yeah.
I think you were able to recall his pod to you.
Yeah, I think we put that in an escape ship. I think we directed that pod into it, or we either got him out of the pod and then got him out of the pod he was in, then found an escape ship and put him in that, or we took the pod, or we had the ship load the pod onto the escape ship, because at a later point when we did split the party, because I remember I think we had like an invisibility ring, and we gave it to Drunin because he was already the stealthiest, and he was going off doing a solo mission, I think, to either sabotage the ship, or there was something he needed to get.
I know the bit you're talking about. This is later.
Yeah. Okay.
A part of the floor of the ship falls away. He fell down 3 decks to a lower level and fell behind. And it was kind of a mad dash for him then to catch up with because he all made it over the hole. He didn't. And I think he either it might have been a potion of invisibility. I don't think it was a ring, but he definitely was able to turn invisible in that moment. You're right. Yeah. Because otherwise he would have been eaten alive by MindFlayers.
Yeah, that would have been a bad day.
You got Saren. You head back to Narveen. through a series of events, you make your way inside the city, fight your way up the central keep, which is a huge pillar, a natural occurring stone pillar.
If I remember rightly, we didn't have to do an awful lot of fighting at the very start, because that was around the time when Shamash had started putting some levels into Bard, and he had Seeming. So he made us all look like drow.
Yes. Correct. He made you all look like drow. So ye went in through an underground passage from the village that's outside Narveen into the city proper, and then disguised yourselves looking like drow. And then you were able to fairly easily make your way through. You walked up the multiple levels that were like, it's like the spiral interior, because the huge pillar was probably a couple 100 feet in diameter. And it was all hollowed out into an enormous fortress that spans floor to ceiling inside of this cavern, and was like the central support. And you knew that from, again, locate object spells, because they're great like that.
Yeah.
You guys knew that the stone you were looking for, the Salika stone, was at the top of the tower. Fair enough. You make your way up, and you're zooming around, or making your way up the stairs and stuff like that. And then at a certain point, you're looking out one of the windows, one of the archways at a balcony on one of the upper levels, and you see one of the Mindflayer ships, and it kind of jumps in, goes, and it starts zooming around. You can see it's got a light, it's kind of scanning the area and sussing things out. All the drow immediately lose their minds, and we're like, we cannot let that ship escape. We have to take it down. If it gets back to the mothership, we are fucked. So they all start firing from ballistas and stuff like that. You guys start firing at it as well. It manages to jump away. And you're thinking, oh, that's probably going to be a problem later on. And you're not wrong. I think I should mention, basically, you get to the top of the tower, actually. You get to the top of the tower. You guys fight the big bad of this arc. You get the stone. There's a very cool moment where Sage picks up the stone, and its power kind of accepts her. And she disintegrates a couple of guys with some moonbeams. And then she has this like vision of things. And you guys are like, right, we got the stone. Let's get the fuck out of here. And you start making your way back down. And as you're probably about the same point going back down as you saw the first ship, all of a sudden, you watch as the capital ship jumps into the cavern where Narveen is located. The reason this happened, and I can't remember if I told you this before, I think I may have at some point. What happened was, when the guys were posing these queries to the ship's computer, at first they were like, I want to open this door, I want to close this door, I want to make this elevator go. Those are pretty straightforward commands. But when you start asking very specifically weird questions, like how many drow are on the ship? How many drow are alive on the ship? How many blue dragonborn are on the ship? What you guys didn't know is that the ship's computer is actually an elder brain. And it started going, why would someone want to know how many living drow and blue dragonborn there are on this ship? And I think it was both Shamash and Drunan that failed a check, or that I was rolling checks for in the background. They both failed deception checks, I want to say, to prevent the elder brain from extracting information from them while they were connected to the network. So it probed their minds, and as a result, it knew exactly where Narveen was. And you guys didn't know this until the ship jumped into just like a couple 100 feet above the city. Instantly, all hell breaks loose. You guys jump into action, start defending people. All the shuttles are zooming around and they're shooting at some of the defenses. There are these swarms of like biomechanical creatures that are attaching themselves to the faces.
Like facehuggers from Aliens.
Yeah, like facehuggers, and they're like incapacitating people. I think you tried to get one of them off someone.
It did not go well.
That person was dead as soon as you disconnected it. Yeah. And these were like their way of like incapacitating people for harvesting later. And one of the best action sequences that we've had in campaign 1
I think so,
kicks off. I know there's one you put on it. Do you want to mention one of them? That you and Sage, Harris, whatever monk were involved in.
It was such a we were there trying to think of what we could do, and I was a paladin with not a lot of movement or ranged options. I basically built my character to be like a frontline destroyer. And as a consequence, when there are spaceships flying a couple 100 feet above, my greatsword just ain't long enough to hit it. So I was trying to.
It was a long greatsword, but it wasn't that long.
I was trying to think of what can I do to be useful here, because my usual shtick isn't going to work. So I was like, right, what I can do is I can help the others be more effective. So first thing I did, because we had a lot of spellcasters, so it was I straight away turned to Sage, our Wood Elf monk, and she had a history of being quite acrobatic with stuff and pulling off some really kind of like crazy like ninja John Woo kind of stuff. So I turned around and I ran like 20 or 30 feet down the road and just like hefted my shield Captain America style, and we did the Captain America Black Widow boost scene from the first Avengers film.
Avengers Assemble, yeah.
And
shoots her up to the air.
Yeah, I basically like rocket her up into the air. She uses her own elemental powers to further boost herself straight up into the air, into the path of a ship that's coming down, and just lands on it and casts Shatter on her knuckles as she punches it, basically, and just
that was one of my favorite
melts it
across. We did.
Yeah.
So they one of my favorite things that they do, or that we kind of flavored for her as an elemental monk, was that we let her be a thing that when she casts Shatter, it like emanates from her fist. So she basically got flung into the air. The ship was coming to collide directly with her, and she punched the nose of the ship. And because Shatter does like extra damage to,
I think
like,
it's double damage
structures,
to metal, and yeah,
it just absolutely wrecked the ship, and it just went careening down into the city.
It was pretty sweet.
At the same time that's happening,
this is where the really crazy shit happens.
At the same time that's happening, Shamash looks at Drunan, our dwarf rogue, and he says, "Drunan, take my hand." Drunan grabs his hand. He points at one of the ships up in the air and casts Dimension Door, and the two of them appear inside the shuttle where there are two Mindflayers. Drunan immediately turns around and it's just like stab into one of the Mindflayers, and he's killed instantly, because
I think he got assassinate off as well.
he actually did, because he's an assassin, so he gets to crit automatically. He did a ton of damage and killed the Mindflayer instantly. The other Mindflayer, the way I have it so that the Mindflayers often control technology or whatever, is that they integrate with it the same way you do those panels.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they pilot the ship is, again, Stargate Atlantis reference for those who appreciate it, is that you sit into a chair, and the chair, I can't do this without my audio going weird, but it tips back.
Yeah.
Like that. And for the audio listeners, Connor just leaned back in his chair. And you basically you integrate with the ship, so your perception kind of becomes the ship. You see things from the perspective of the ship as if it were a creature.
Very what was that one, the recently one, Prometheus style, the space jockey from Prometheus?
Yes, I very like the space jockey, actually. Yeah, absolutely. And this guy's in his chair, but he's kind of unaware, because when he's controlling the ship, he's blind and deaf to what's happening in the ship itself. So Shamash, being Shamash, runs up behind him, leans over the chair from behind, over the back of the chair, and lightning breaths down into this guy's body, who gets a total system shock from it. And I believe is killed, or maybe he did something else as well. But that pilot was killed. Of course, once the pilot's killed, the craft begins careening towards the ground. So Shamash hops into the chair, and I have him make an intelligence check to see if you can integrate with the system. And he manages it. And all of a sudden, Shamash and Drunan have commandeered an alien shuttle. It's like Independence Day.
Oh man, it was both absolutely ridiculous and something I really should have seen coming.
Yeah. Mike, when he was a full-on spellcaster, was just Mike who plays Shamash, was just both brilliant but also painful at times. There was times I looked at him and I'm like, oh, do you have to? Okay, it's technically the rules, so fine. But other times then he'd do things, and I'd be like, that was fucking cool. That was so damn cool. So he pulls up near the ground, back where all the rest of you are still fighting. And he's like, everyone on the ship, come on, we're going up to destroy the capital ship. So you all hop on board, and you dock with the capital ship above the city. And the fight's still going on. The drow are putting up a serious fight. The Mindflayers are really hitting the city hard, though. So you're on a bit of a time crunch. So you arrive inside there. You fight your way through the ship and eventually arrive in the...
it's like the command center, like the bridge, essentially.
Exactly. Now, for the hardcore D&D lore people, you're not going to like the way I describe the next scene, because it is absolutely not in keeping with the lore of these two creatures. I don't care. It's my D&D game. I'll do what I want. So what happened was, you arrive in the bridge, and there are two creatures in there. One of them is an Ilarithid, which is like it's a size large creature. It's like a bigger Mindflayer with longer tentacles and stuff, and they hit a lot harder, and they've got some better psychic abilities. So he is the pilot or the captain of the ship, essentially. Behind him, in this briny pool of goo, is the Elder Brain, and that's like the ship's central computer. A fight kicks off, and as soon as it does, within the first round or two, Saren, who is with you, gets mind controlled by the Alarithid. So already you're down one person. So what is it? We got Eru, Sage, Drunin, Shamash, Enna, and then Saren.
Yeah.
Instantly Saren's gone.
Yeah.
Then a couple of Mind Blast abilities from the Alarithid and from the Elder Brain render the other four of the rest of you unconscious, because you all have relatively low intelligence.
Yeah, Eru. I think I at most had a +2, and no, I had like 9 int. I had 9 int as Eru.
So that was that. So the last person left alive, or not alive rather, but not stunned by the effect, was Enna, because she's an arcane trickster and she has better saves and that kind of stuff. So Enna's left alive. A thing I should mention about Enna is that a few sessions prior, and no one knew this bar Enna and Aaron, the person who was playing Enna, is that she had picked up a talisman earlier in this, maybe 2 sessions prior.
This look you're seeing on my face is because I'm getting angry about it all over again.
It's one of my favorite moments from the entirety of that campaign. And just because Aaron was not like playing a very long time. In fact, this was the first arc she had joined in for.
Yeah.
This whole Underdark escapade. So when she turned around to me and texted me this at the table, I lost my mind. What this talisman did, and I brought her into the other room and she got it and she attuned to it. I said, okay, you're evil now. And she said, what? I said, you're evil. The talisman made you evil. You are evil. And she went, oh, okay. And I said, look, whatever that means for you, or whatever you think your character would do if your character was evil, that's what your character is going to do now. So you're evil. She's like, cool, awesome, I'm down. And I'm like, excellent. And I told her, but if I'm being completely honest, I didn't have a lot of faith in Erin to pull it off, because again, she's very new to the game. I don't expect her to get the complexities of alignment and stuff like that, and how to kind of act against a team. It's very easy to join in a game and go along with the party, but for me to I kind of threw her in the deep end a little bit. To go against a party like that is a lot more difficult when you're kind of new to the game. She was brilliant. It was in that moment when one person was under mind control, Saren, and the other 4 were stunned and floundering around on the floor, that she turns to me and she says, oh, I want to try something. One sec. And she texts me something. And what she says to me is, hey, because I'm evil now, would now be a good time to steal the Salika Stone from Sage and run away. And I had like a fit of nervous laughter, because I'm like, now is a good time. Now is a good time. I kind of don't want you to do it because my fiance might kill me. But yeah, now, oh my God, that's like, yeah, do it. So I'm there freaking out, because I had this was completely out of left field. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh God, what's going to... It's like, I've got to try and fix my TV. There we go. I have a TV as my monitor, and it's being stupid right now. But yeah, so that happened, and I'm like, oh my God. So I describe everything from the perspective of Sage, who has the stone on her person, that they'd just gotten. The entirety of her personal story was to recover this for her village. She's floundering, her vision's blurry, she's rolling around, she can't quite focus, and she sees her ally, Enna, coming to help her up, presumably.
Yeah.
And I describe Enna leaning over her, blurry. It looks like she's going to grab her hold of her, maybe pick her up, but no, she starts rifling through her coat and her clothes. And Tara, at this point, Sage's player, is very confused. And I think everyone at the table is very confused.
No, I had no idea. I had absolutely no... I was like, oh, she's looking for like a potion. She's going to like do something. You know, like, I thought she was trying to be like helpful.
Oh, God. Yeah. So I described then, I think I had to make an investigation check, but she has proficiency and she's an arcane trickster and high intelligence. She had no problems. So she finds the stone. And I described to Tara, you see Enna leaning over you, rifling through your coat, and you watch as she pulls out a glowing purple gem. She looks at you, smirks, stuffs it in her own pocket, casts invisibility, and walks away. And everyone lost their marbles, and Tara was like, "What? What?" And Tara and Aaron were working together at the time. She's like, "What?" And I'm like, this is one of the best moments I've ever had in D&D, just because Aaron surprised me as a player, because that is, if they're like, I don't know, you could play that role of being the evil character and just maybe steal some personal belongings, or maybe in a fight you decide I'm going to join the bad guys, but that's all very, meh. To steal an ultra powerful magic gem that is the MacGuffin of the quest.
Yeah.
It was
and like
beautiful.
Also,
beautiful.
That character's sole purpose for adventuring, like the sole reason this character left their fucking home.
Yeah, exactly. She had not left her, because her village is like secret and in a jungle. She had not left her village her entire life, because it's a pious law that you can't leave your village. But Sage left home because someone came in and stole that gem, and she said, even if it means I am exiled for the rest of my life, I will recover this gem and I will return it home, and then I will leave as well, because I've broken our highest law. And that was her whole thing. And then she was able to lose it to this arcane trickster who had come in out of nowhere, and it was so beautiful. So she leaves, and the only reason they know she leaves is because she makes her way. You see her kind of, as she's fading into invisibility, you see her kind of turning around and walking away, and then you see the door on the opposite end of the room open, and you're like, she just went out that door. Fuck, we got to go after her. So you guys have to really, really, really quickly wrap up the fight with the Elder Braid and the Alarithin. I'm aware, again, for the people who are lore experts, I'm aware those two creatures don't normally work together. In fact, they're normally in opposition. It's fantasy. Don't worry about it. And what happens is the fight kind of wraps up. You guys start pursuing her. She tried to make her way to one of the shuttles so she could get off the ship and get away. She's on one of them. She's trying to figure out how to make it work. But and she's kind of tweaking some stuff. I think I had to make a couple checks, which she didn't do great at. And I was panicking, because I'm like, if she gets on the ship and flies away, how the hell do I run an arc where they then have to find her and she's somewhere else?
Yeah,
I didn't know how this was going to work out. Oh, sorry, bumped my microphone. I need to get a better setup with this pop filter. It's really annoying.
It's all good.
So you guys pursue her. You find her in the shuttle. And the layout of the shuttle is somewhat like the puddle jumpers again in Stargate Atlantis. I really like Stargate Atlantis. It's sort of like the puddle jumpers, where there's a big glass screen in the front. And at the back is like a ramp that lifts up and down for you to get in and out. So you guys come in there. I believe Drunan, being a rogue, could dash. So he double dashed action, bonus action. And he caught up with her first. And he had a dire squirrel named Binky, who he had run around behind her and tie her shoelaces from behind. And I had the squirrel making stealth checks and sleight of hand checks and all this other shit. And he managed to tie her laces together. And I didn't tell Erin that this was happening. So she's at the table, and I'm kind of like, I think I either wrote it on my phone or I was whispering stuff to Dan.
I think we were Facebook messaging back and forth, yeah.
Yeah. So she has no idea her shoelaces are tied together. So dumb. I love it, but it's so dumb. And then I think at one point she tried to move, and I had her fall flat in her face. And told her, "Oh, your shoelaces are tied together." And she's like, "What?" And then you arrive on the scene as the Vengeance Paladin, and you're like, "Sorry about this." And you clock her in the head with your warhammer and knock her out.
I specified non-lethal damage. I just want, just to be clear, I specified non-lethal damage.
You did, and it's actually really you never really used the warhammer unless you had to, which is again very rarely. It was normally your greatsword guy. But the warhammer you picked up at some point for some reason.
Oh, I think I had one from starting.
Say again?
I think I had one from starting. I think it was just as part of my starting equipment or something.
Oh, okay. Might have been, yeah.
But yeah, I just choked up on that bad boy and smited the shit out of my party member.
So you knocked her out. I think he then went, okay, now we have to get off the ship, the other 5 of us, plus our unconscious teammate, and figure out why she turned against us.
Mm-hmm.
You do get the stone back, but at this point... Oh, and here, okay. For those who are wondering, when are they going to get to the Doctor Who part? Here's the Doctor Who part. So if it wasn't cool enough that Shamash teleported onto one of the ships and managed to commandeer it and get aboard the shuttle or the capital ship, it was the most Doctor Who thing in the world when he stayed behind after the Ularithid and Elderbrain were dead. And he went, oh, the Ularithid's chair, which he would use to pilot, is like a large-sized creature's chair. Well, here's where that handy spell Enlarge comes in handy again. And he casts Enlarge and sits into it. And I'm running through the rounds, and I'm talking about you guys, Enna taking her turn, you guys pursuing her, tying the laces together, and I'm also coming back to him each turn and saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? So I believe the first one he did was recall all of the facehugger creatures and recall all the shuttles.
Mm-hmm.
So send out a recall message. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And I think I had to make an in check. And I'm like, yeah, cool. You do that. You successfully send a message to all the other shuttles. And because your mind is now integrated with the capital ship, you can feel all of them turning around and suddenly coming back. And that was his turn. Next turn comes around. What do you want to do? He's like, I want to, I think he wanted to set it on a collision course with the water, with the lake that surrounded Narveen. If I'm not, or maybe set it to self-destruct. I can't remember.
So I think I remember why he did. So he did that thing. He recalled all the ships.
Yes.
And then because Mike knows how to code and knows how databases work.
Yes, Mike is a programmer, so this is why his mind works this way.
He just pulled out literally the most Doctor Who thing I've ever heard, in that he recalled all the ships. And like, this is why, like, it's completely like it's starting to destroy his brain as he's working with it as well, because it's key to
I hadn't taken like exhaustion levels.
Yeah, exhaustion, and I think he took psychic damage as well at some stage. But like, blood is like pouring out of his nostrils, like 11 style, as his brain is melting while he's trying to do all this. He recalls all the ships and deactivates all the facehuggers and recalls them to the ship. Then while he's on the ship, he queries their database for information about the drow and about the dragonborn. And it comes back with like X amount of results. And he goes, wipe all information. He wipes their entire society's knowledge database from the ship. Then sets the ship to jump out of the cavern back to the Far Realm and sets it on a self-destruct timer for 60 seconds from now. And then he teleports out of the ship himself.
Well, no, he didn't teleport out. He slumped out of the chair. So he did this. I think the last command. I think he said. Yeah, I think that what he did was he set it for self-destruct.
Sorry, folks. This is like 3 years ago at this stage.
Yeah, this is a while back. Still one of our best moments, I think. So, and at this moment, by the way, I'm playing the song "I Am the Doctor" from I believe it's from the Smith, the Matt Smith. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Matt Smith season. So everyone's super pumped. It's really, really great music. If you haven't listened to it, it's "I Am the Doctor." And he goes, all right, set a self-destruct timer for 60 seconds or whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, I have to make a check, and he does it. I'm like, cool. And then I'm saying, right, you're kind of noticing that the ship is actually getting pretty pummeled anyway. The drow seem to be putting up a serious fight, especially since the Ularithid and Elderbrain are no longer in charge. Things are in disarray, so now the drow are turning the battle in their favor. And he's like, can I do one more thing? I'm like, you can try, but you're going to be cutting things pretty tight. And he goes, I want to give one more command. And I'm like, all right, what is it? And I'm thinking, he wants to crash it. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. And he goes, I want to delete all information. And I'm like, what? He's like, I want to erase their entire database. And I'm like, holy shit. That's everything. And the Elderbrain is dead. There's like no backup. It's like, that's all their information. Now it's every area, every place they've ever been, everywhere where the ship has ever been, they'd lose everything. So he deletes that. He slumps out of the chair, having taken another level of exhaustion, and his nose is bleeding. He's taking psychic damage, and he kind of stumbles his way to catch up with you guys. And at this point, the ship is starting to come apart, and you guys meet up with him, begin racing off the ship as fast as you can as corridors are exploding. Like I said earlier, one of the floors collapses in, and I have you all make athletics checks, and I think Drunan was the one who failed, and he fell down 3 decks to a lower level that was on fire. He drank the invisibility potion and had to climb his way back out, but he was way behind you guys at this point. And you guys get to a shuttle first, start priming it up, and he's on his way, and you're like holding on, and you're going, he's going to be here, he's going to be here soon, he's going to be here soon. And I remember telling him, describing him running through the corridors, and he like goes to turn down one corridor and then has to turn back because he just sees a wall of Illithid coming at him, and they're all frantic and flailing, and their tentacles are going mental. and he eventually makes it to you guys onto the ship. The ship launches out of the capital. The shuttle launches out of the capital ship in the same way that the fighters launch in Battlestar Galactica, just through this chute of a tunnel, and it goes out the other end. You zoom away, and there is a teleport feature on the ship, and it works like the spell teleport. And I tell, because the way they kind of have to charge off the capital ship, and I believe Drunan is piloting at this point because Shamash is in bits.
His brain is in ruins.
Yeah. I think he was the next most intelligent person, if I'm not mistaken. Probably on par with Sage, maybe, but because Enna's unconscious, she is the most intelligent. And then Shamash would have been up there as well. He had a decent in score. So Drunan hops in the chair, and he flies you guys out, and he goes teleport, and he teleports you guys because he is familiar with the location. He teleports you guys to home, which is Dragon's Hold, your keep that you recently acquired. Right as in the background, you guys watch your ship go and just disappear into the ether, and behind you see the Illithid capital ship go and explode in the cavern, saving Narveen, recovering the gem, defeating the bad guy, and destroying the Elder Brain and Ularithid, all in one swift stroke.
Mm-hmm. And I believe he finished the final command he gave when he said delete all information and set it away. I believe he directly quoted Matt Smith. Oh, not Matt Smith. Was it Matt Smith? I think it might.
Yeah, no, it was either Matt Smith or Tennant. No,
I think it was Tennant, but he goes, "Just this once, nobody dies," and then hit the button and then went off, and it was the most Doctor Who thing in the world. But I am the Doctor playing behind it.
I could be mistaken, but that might be Eccleston. I think that's Eccleston.
No, because let's not have a Doctor Who argument on a D&D podcast.
Okay. Yeah, it's not that podcast, but that's a different podcast. Join us next week on our Who podcast.
No. More Mike will be replacing me.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the story of the Battle of Narveen. Probably just for the numerous, between the Avengers style way that the fight kicked off, the way that you guys infiltrated the Illithid ship, but unknowing to you, the Illithid kind of infiltrated your minds and located Narveen. The fight with the Ularithid, Enna becoming evil, Mike being a total Doctor Who and setting the self-destruct and wiping all their information and stuff like that. It was just one of like the best arcs. I think that entire thing encompassed maybe 3 sessions.
Yeah, it was about a month from start to end. Yeah,
and it was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
and to this day, I'm still very much. I look back on that fondly as like the high point of the previous campaign for me, anyway. I just thought that so much stuff caught me off guard as the dungeon master that I was like, this is top, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So what's next, Con?
What's next on the agenda? Let me have a look at my notes here while I adjust my phone. Do what I tell you. Stupid phone. Okay.
I believe it's kind of tied in, isn't it?
My phone?
No, what we're going to talk about next.
Yes, actually, you could say that. Poor segue. Martin, how do you handle bosses in your D&D games?
Okay, so that's an interesting one because
I need to apologize. That was the worst transition ever. I was all over the place for like a solid 20-something seconds there. I'm so sorry. Martin, please continue.
It's all good. It's all good, friend. It happens to the best of us. But yeah, I just kind of
performance issues. Am I right?
Oh god, yeah. We'll leave that and we'll leave that for another podcast maybe. But yeah, I kind of had mine. I wrote some notes earlier when I had an idea, but the way I normally do it is I think you can break them down into 2 kinds. Boss battles. Either I suppose you can do similar things with villains as well, where either they are player centric or world centric is how I like to describe it. In that the boss battle, or even just the boss itself, like the villain, the player centric one is kind of self-explanatory. It's either something that's motivated by a player backstory or part of a player backstory, or their ongoing quest to fulfill whatever kind of a destiny or goal they have.
Stuff like it to call back to what we just discussed, the story we just told. In the case of Sage's arc, there was the thief who stole her stone. That is the villain who motivated her quest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that if you're going to do it that way, I think the best way to do it is to have a mix of both. Like I know some people do entirely player-driven narrative worlds and entirely just world-driven, where like the world happens around the players and they get caught up in world events rather than the players being the driving force behind the narrative.
Yeah.
Personally, I lean more towards player-centric, but I do still have stuff that just happens in the world as it's going on. And I think with boss battles as well, that's where you get onto like you can so player centric then would be like a rival or a villain or maybe just like some feast that they have to accomplish, like climb the tallest mountain in the realm or something like that to appease a god.
Go on a pilgrimage of some kind, maybe.
Yeah, and then world centric quests would be stuff like, say your players are just happen to be journeying through an area and they find like a village burned and in ruins, and the whole thing has been just burnt to ash and just there's no one left alive, and then they hear a roar from a mountain nearby. And they're like, okay, that, and they have to go then and find obviously the dragon that did this and go and take care of that. And that's what I would describe as sort of like a world centric boss, in that it's a thing that exists in the world on its own, independently from the party, and influences things around it in the same way that the PCs do.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. I think we both have a lot of experience with there being, like you said, world centric enemies, people that maybe the DM has manifested within the homebrew world, or maybe the set world, the published world that they are running. And then you obviously have your rivals, your arch enemies of your players. They have their own particular what's the word I'm looking for? Quarries. Quarry is the word I'm looking for. And I think we both have some good examples. Do you have any examples of a player based enemy, of a player centric enemy?
Yeah, actually, I think pretty good one. It's actually one of probably like the first big like player centric arc I did was related to I have a CF swashbuckler called Erandir in my party, and he's got some very strong kind of Prince Zuko vibes. He's like the outcast,
the best written character in anything ever.
He's the outcast son of the Duke of the capital sea elf city. It's called Cirith Laure. And it's actually half it exists above land for air breathers who come to do work and business in the city, and then there's like a giant slope down into the sea. And then the
air breathers sounds like it's a racial slur. I don't think you're allowed to say air breathers anymore, Martin.
It felt weird saying it, all right. But then the rest of the city is below the sea, and so a cult based out of that city attacked a festival in a city that the party had been operating out of for their first, say, like 4 or 5 quests. Sort of like they're not their home base technically, but like just their main like quest hub, shall we say. Yeah. So they attacked that, and they did that to steal an artifact and bring and take that away. And that led to them going to that city. And by the end of it, then the final boss battle of that fight was they discovered that the cult that attacked the city is actually being supported by the royal family and is led by Erandir's father, the Duke. And that was my big player moment. So I got to have me and him got to have a cool like Darth Vader moment where they interrupt a ritual to summon this eldritch sea god and bring it in through the plane. And I did the whole like villain father monologue, and I was like, "Oh, I've known you since you were a child. Like join me, take your rightful place at my side."
Together we can rule the galaxy.
Yeah, and so there's this whole thing. It was really cool. He gave me a lot to work with. With his background in that, he said he was like a prince who disagreed. He had a duel with his father. His father shot off a piece of his ear. He injured his father. Then he was exiled, and he hadn't been home in 50 years. And at some point in the last 50 years, when he had been sailing from the place he had been, his ship was attacked by this mystery sea beast and destroyed. He gave me that hook, and I tangled with the sea beast thing for a while. I was looking at what Matt Mercer was doing with Ford and Critical Role, because it was very similar kind of subject matter. And obviously you don't want to copy that exactly, even regardless of how well it's done. You don't just want to retread someone else's ideas. So this is where it started coming in, where he that hook he gave me, I tied that back then in as a revelation in the boss battle before the boss battle started, where Erandir, the sea elf swashbuckler, he was supposed to be the original vessel for this house, because they have a bloodline descended from like the very first sea elves, because they're the royal family. He was supposed to host this sea god in him, but because they had their duel and their sort of disagreement, and he was banished, he couldn't act as the vessel. So his father attempted the ritual with himself instead, but it was vessels for the thing. It needed to be perfect. It wasn't perfect, so he could only summon a small portion of it. So he used that small portion of power to sink that ship.
That kind of reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy X, actually.
Yeah,
With like the summoning of Sin and who was it? Like the way that you kind
Sin
of
inject and Titus.
yeah, and like Jecht became Sin.
Yeah,
I think I understand Final Fantasy X. Tara's explained it to me
no,
numerous times.
that's pretty much it. It's a
Yeah.
confusing game in and of itself.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
god.
and I did actually pull from Final Fantasy X. It was I hadn't played it, but it was one of those things where I went over to my friend's house when I was younger and I watched them play through it. So I kind of it was a bit of that. I pulled heavily from like the Zuko stuff, a little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean, and also with
The first 3 films, right?
Yes, of course. And then just as well was kind of pulling elements from just seeing how Matt Mercer was handling that, because like what better kind of a touchstone to see how people are working out these nautical themes and this elder god stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had this all written before. Matt had basically laid out a really good blueprint for doing like an elder god kind of thing to do with the sea. So I really appreciated it when it came time to write more, to have an idea, you know. But again, it still tried to kind of keep it my own. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say in terms of like a game I've ran. Probably my favorite, my best example of like a player driven one. It was a lot of to do with like their relationship, and so tied up in his backstory and kind of resolving his reason for why he's out here adventuring now, and kind of seeing where that left him afterwards. It's like with stuff like that, it gives a lot of opportunity to shed old character traits and maybe take on a couple of new ones. Like if so a good example of this is before that point, and actually before he got to that city, he had not told any of the party that he was this exiled prince. He went by a different name.
Right.
He was called Erandir Corsair. And then once he defeated his father and kind of accepted the thing, and like as part of the thing, they defeat his father, stopped the ritual. But so the thing's spirit wasn't summoned in, but its body had been basically fossilized in the city from the previous time it was summoned, and that reawakened as the sort of like the barrier between the realms thinned and was pierced during this ritual. And so they beat him, but outside this mindless, like eldritch monster body is still rampaging through the city.
Okay.
So
this is without the consciousness of the god. It's just a powerful physical creature.
It's just like a giant mass of like writhing mouths and tentacles and eyes. And I just went full theater of the mind with these guys as it rampaged over. It was like, what do you want to do? And the first thing he'd done, because he kind of like, as part of this whole battle, he had kind of accepted who he was, and he revealed to his party that he was not Erandir Corsair, he was Erandir Dune here, which is the royal family of the city. And then straight off after that boss fight, they come out and they're all trying to save the city. He runs up to a legion of battle entrenched city guard. They're called they're the squall guard is what I call them.
Yes.
And he basically runs up there all there, and the party kind of take out they kind of start giving orders and clearing people out. And he runs up to the guards, and he's like, do this, 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 and this. And they're like, who are you? Why should we listen to you? And that's when he goes, and he did the full Aragorn, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn. He got that moment, and he got to do the full, like, I am the forgotten prince that had just returned. And so
that's so satisfying as a player when you get to have a reveal, because it's a common thing where players will have a hidden identity or a hidden part of their past, and when you finally get to go, I am this, but you get to do it in a satisfying and like theatrical and dramatic way. There's really nothing like it.
Yeah. So and from then on, now he's gone by his real name instead of his pseudonym Corsair, which is fitting because a Corsair is a pirate and he was a pirate.
Yeah. And like you said, there's such a good opportunity for character growth in personal player driven arcs where you get to handle where the boss is your father or your old mentor, or maybe like your enemy from a young age. Maybe you were next door neighbors and you just hated each other, right? But like getting to evolve your character, step up a level, or it's a good opportunity as well if you're playing a character and you find like maybe you're not totally satisfied with how you're playing it or whatever, but you feel like you can't just unjustly change the way the character acts. When a big revelation or a big moment happens, oh my god, recreate your character entirely. That's your opportunity to go, I've now taken on new information. I can now justify my character having this whole other life, whether that be for better or for worse. And it can go both ways.
Absolutely, yeah. And like even if it's just like superficially, even if you're just going to like change something about how your character looks. Maybe like in the case of like an exiled noble, maybe after you finish that quest and you've kind of either redeemed yourself or your family name or something like that. Maybe now instead of going around just with a cloak on, you have like a cloak with a brooch with your family sigil on it to signify that you've now accepted who you are. It doesn't like I said, it doesn't have to dramatically change how you play your character, who you are as a character, but it's always good to just try and build in some subtle or just some subtle sign of like personal development or change, even if it's just aesthetically.
And you mentioned something there as well about players giving you a lot to work with, because I've been in situations where players haven't given me a lot to run with, and you do what you can. You try to work in characters and stuff like that, but honestly, I feel as though the best way to handle it is to try and incorporate some. You don't have to go super heavy if you don't want to, but always try to have a mix between player-driven, like individual player/character-driven quests, and the quests that you as a DM want to run within the world.
Absolutely.
So for what you said there, that was very much a player-driven arc. But if you have other things going on as well, regardless of what the breakdown is, whether it's 50-50, 90-10, 70-30, doesn't matter. Whatever breakdown you want, as long as you're getting a bit of a balance. Because I've had players in our first campaign. We had a couple of players that joined in. It didn't stick around for long, and it's because, well, okay, pardon me. It's because I feel like when they don't give you a lot to work with, a player doesn't give you like even a remote backstory, you know. And one of these players, there was a dwarf fighter who was in the party very early on, and he only stuck around for a couple of sessions, but he didn't actually have a backstory at all. He didn't really have much interest in writing it. That's a whole other thing. Players not really.
We can get that. We can get to that another day, and we can try and discuss how to like get people to buy in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just as a quick rule, it's perfectly acceptable for people to have different levels or different types of buy-in as well. You know, whether it's I want to do the whole acting out my character and being dramatic, or I'm just here for the fighting. I just want to roll dice and hit things. That's fine too. As long as everyone gets their turn, everyone gets their moment at the table. But yeah, I feel like on the other side of things like that, when a player does give you something to work with, and particularly you can work that into the world, you can get some absolutely fantastic like backstories and stuff like that. Like, again, to come back to the whole Narveen thing and Sage and trying to recover the Salika stone, in her backstory when Tara wrote it, she said, oh yeah, the stone was stolen, and witnesses say that the stone was stolen by a drow. So now, as a result, Sage is like, I know a drow stole it, but I don't know why, and I don't know where they are, so I have to find out where drow might go. And this led to the whole trying to find Narveen. But then at the same time, a friend of ours who was playing Saren originally, he wanted to play a drow. Completely, I had separate conversations in different houses with what you want to play and what class you want to play. And he said, oh, drow, like a dark elf sounds really cool. And I'm like, yeah, drow are awesome. And he's like, can I be like a drow that's like all this, and I want to have this edgy background, but maybe I'm exiled from my city and all that. And I'm like, yeah, you can totally do all that. And then I start, because they both gave me so much to work with, I immediately think, sacred stone stolen by a drow, playing a drow exiled from your home, and I was able to like meld the two of those so beautifully into one another. It still annoys me a little bit to this day that player didn't stick around, because I genuinely think he would have loved the revelation of, oh, the drow that stole that stone is from your former home city. You know, I mean, you kind of meld those two in. It's great. Like, it's good to have player arcs that are individual player arcs, but also when you can link multiple people in and get the buy-in. Like, currently at the moment now, we're kind of doing in our own game that I'm running, our warlock is currently on his kind of unraveling the cult behind his elder god thing, his kind of quest. And we recently got a new player joining in, which is our friend Gavin, and Gavin is playing a blood hunter who has a specific thing against aberrations and the fire realm and all these other creatures. So now it's currently, I think the two of them are very invested, because it's a similar theme that melds in very well with both of them. And like I said, it's grand to have one player who's like, this is my quest and we're going on my quest, and everyone's like, it's your turn to go on a quest, let's go on a quest. And then but if you can get more than one person at the table to really heavily invest, if players are like, oh yeah, I'm playing a human and my my uncle betrayed our family, and someone else is like, oh, I'm playing a human and I'm looking for my lost father. What if your uncle is this person's father? And immediately that's such heavy
Yeah.
buy-in for the players.
I
We got a bit off
honestly
topic
thought you
talking
were
about
going to
player
say,
buy-in.
like, I'm an uncle who betrayed my family.
Could you imagine? Oh god.
Quickest resolution of a player backstory ever. Session 1, you!
Yeah, session 1, you stab, end of game.
That
Roll a
nearly
new
happened in
character.
our first campaign.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh, the
Let's
immediate fighting.
let's not get into that though.
That's a whole other thing.
Whole other tangent.
But yes, so we started. We got on a bit of a tangent there. We were talking about boss characters.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll say obviously that's about setting up from a story perspective a boss, an enemy, someone you can make a target or make a goal. There's a goal that surrounds them, whether it's to recover a magic item like a gem or to kill them because they're head of a cult like they are in your one. Side note, I love all of the world building you did for Sirith. What's it called?
Sirith Lowry. It's my player Steve Irander. He's the one who actually named. I think it means like the city of flowing gold in Elvish.
Oh, very nice. It's so I love the upper surface level, the underwater level, the way that the squall guard, what they called?
Squall guard, yeah.
Yeah, I love that as well. And you also had like shark racing, if I'm not mistaken.
I was trying to think of, because they were doing stuff where they were doing urban exploration. I wanted to have stuff for them to do other than just hunt this guy down, or just stuff to do in a city anyway. And I was like, what can they do? And I think if I remember right, I think like they can like low level talk to fish or sea animals, sea elves.
I believe so. They can talk to creatures that can breathe water.
Yeah. So narratively, I had it do. Like, what would they do for fun? And I was like, oh well, like horse racing doesn't exist underwater, and like I didn't want to do like sea horse racing, so I was like, oh, like shark racing, and except it's instead of going horizontally across a field with jumps, it's like a vertical up a cannon gorge with all these balconies built either side, and there's like rings that are turned at different angles and different ways that you have to like swim the shark through it all. Yeah,
very cool. Yeah, it's one of you sent me plenty of notes when you were kind of asking me what I think of it and stuff like that. And honestly, I was both super impressed because I want to be a person. I want that to be a video game, and I want to explore that. And I was also super jealous because I'm like, now I can't do something like this in my world. I've been copying them. But it is so good. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things. But back on bosses, I'm distracting myself.
I know. Yeah.
I'm all over the place today. So what changes if you have a boss character from a mechanical perspective? So it's coming up on the final fight, or the players are encountering them for the first time. And there's a rule of thumb: it's good to have your players encounter a boss a couple times before the final fight, because then there's oh, that guy got a crit on me in the previous fight. I have a vendetta to get against them. So what kind of stuff do you do on the back end to a stat block or to a boss to make them a boss?
Okay, so I haven't done a huge amount. So with that battle there with that we're talking about with the sea elf and his father, I used a Kraken priest as a stat block for that because it just seemed too perfectly appropriate.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's got it's a cool looking creature. It's got some really cool abilities. I think it's got a recharge ability where the Kraken speaks through it, and everyone around can it's either stunned or feared for a minute.
Is that like a thunder ability, or is that it's melee touch attack?
Yeah. They have a melee touch that does lightning damage, but they have a recharge ability similar to like a dragon's breath called Voice of the Kraken, and it's literally the Kraken speaks through them, and I think it's like a wisdom save, or you're stunned or afraid. But it was really cool. So I didn't actually mess with that too much because that was really, really perfect. One I did mess with a little was a boss battle I came up with. My current arc that we're doing is like a classic horror movie monster kind of werewolves and undead and the whole thing. And there's like one of I got some new party members recently. One of them is basically like a Witcher type character. So we're doing a thing where like it's his or him representing his organization versus like an anti-Witcher organization, kind of like it's kind of like a fallen disciple kind of storyline. And as part of the thing, the enemies became aware of the party through unfortunate circumstances and errors of judgment by the party. And so they set up an ambush because they knew the party were helping the city to defend from the other enemy, Lycanthrope Army. So they set up an ambush where it was it was a frost giant zombie and a frost giant skeleton, and this is a recent thing, and I was trying to up the difficulty of my boss fights a bit, and I overstepped the bounds just a tad, just a tad. And I realised I had overstepped the bounds just a tad, and I'll get on to changing stat blocks now, because on the first round after combat happened, the guys came down, and my original plan for it was, right, it was the place they were going to was like a rallying point for the enemy army near the city that was hidden in like a gorge. So like the land is like here, and there's a drop down here that leads down and kind of goes around to a wider area that's sunken into the ground where you could like hide like probably like 50, 60 forces or whatever. And then
for their audio listeners, Martin just made very, very, very good hand gestures about gorges.
Oh God, sorry. Yeah, it's like a step. It's like a step level thing.
It's like a down place. It's a down place.
I'm sorry. I talk my hands a lot. But basically, my plan was for them to go down there. They go down the gorge. They travel through there. Then they go into a cave where they would find a letter addressed to the blood hunter in the party from the leader of the enemy order, going like, thank you for basically going, thanks for letting me know you were here. Hope you enjoy the surprise. They walk outside. Giant skeleton and giant zombie get up. Fight starts. They didn't go in there first. First, they tried to harvest bones and organs from the giant corpses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even.
Yeah. So the sorcerer tries to pull a toenail out because she knows that there's toenails in the frost giant strength potion.
Oh, clever! Very clever.
The rogue takes out a dagger in each hand and starts ice pick climbing up the zombie to try and get to his heart. They wake up for initiative rolls. We start, and our druid Mike Mandroy, he's standing pretty close, and he decides that he's going to run out of their range to get away from them. And he's just he's just going to take the opportunity attack because he figures it'll be a giant. He'll take the opportunity attack.
Okay.
What he didn't realize was that both of those characters have a reach of, I think it's 10 or 15 feet. So he took an opportunity attack from each of them, took 52 points of slashing damage in a round, and was dropped to 15 HP from full on his first turn. So naturally had the desired effect I wanted for the party, where I went, oh shit, this is a serious boss fight.
This is bad, yeah.
But also had the effect of me where I went, oh shit, I need to nerf this now.
Yeah.
So what I did was, on the fly, I stripped out one attack from each of them because they had 2 attacks and they rolled 3d12 plus 6 for each attack. So I stripped an attack out of each of them, and then the giant zombie, the frost giant zombie, had I think it's called the freezing glare attack, and it does.
Yeah, it's in Explorer's Guide to Wildemar.
Yeah, it is. It does. It does like it paralyzes you if you fail it, and it also does 10d6 cold damage. Now I stripped out, just judging by my characters, like they have 1 tank and then the rest is squish. Pretty squish. They're hard to hit, but if they get hit, they don't have a lot of hit points. Yeah. So I immediately stripped out the damage out of the cold ability, took 1 attack off each of them, and was like, right, I think this is a reasonable level now, and kind of let it go. And it did, and it ended up being a very dramatic kind of thing because the guys got very into it, very kind of scared, and as well, they still hit hard, even they only had 1 attack. It's still 3d12 plus 6 with a plus 10 to hit. Like it's a fairly likely hit, and it's going to hit hard.
Yeah.
And only my blood hunter had resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, so everyone else was taking that straight to the face. So it still made it really tense, and it made it an exciting battle, and it had a really cool conclusion. The sorcerer twin spelled lightning chromatic orbs and just blew both of them up. It was really cool. But yeah, it was still that was kind of an example of a time where I had to really, really tweak the stat block on the fly, because I thought raw going in rules as written, they would have been fine. And it doesn't say, when it says deadly on the combat difficulty encounter, it doesn't go deadly 1, deadly 2, deadly 3,
once it passes that mark, it doesn't tell you if it gets any higher or level above. So
so that was because I'm very much still, I consider myself still learning when it comes to like creating and DMing and stuff, like the like descriptive and not writing and stuff. That's kind of stuff I've done all through life, like writing and stuff I've kind of looked into and read and been good with. But like the actual stat block tweaking and designing stuff is stuff I'm still kind of learning. So that's kind of the only one I can really give, but I'm sure you have way better ones.
I have a couple. Obviously I run a whole campaign for like 3 years with you guys. Now we have another I want to say 2 years, but we haven't been playing as much recently for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
That's a really memorable encounter though, and like a really good learning point, I think, actually, for anyone listening, any DMs out there, that it is 100% okay to change things on the fly. If you to try and because and this is a skill you want to develop. It's a muscle you want to kind of like practice with, and but I've often been in situations running games for you guys where you start an encounter and you think to yourself, yeah, this should be fine. This should be like tough, but like not too bad. And that you want to hit that sweet spot where it's like, this is tough but doable.
Yeah, you want them to finish with 1 HP going, holy shit.
Yeah, sort of. You want them to take a couple hits and maybe 1 or 2 super heavy attacks, you know. But not, and maybe 1 person out of 4 gets downed, but they still handily managed the fight. It was tough, but they handily managed it. But like you said, in situations like that, it can often, and even like I know you say you consider yourself to be still learning, but I know you've been doing DMing for a while. I still consider myself to be learning, and I've been DMing for 4 or 5 years. 5 years, actually, now, yeah. But I still consider myself to be learning as well, and it's still oftentimes we will make these kind of judgments of error. And like I said, it's totally okay if in the first round of combat, when you're running 2 rogues against you, they both manage to get off double sneak attack in a round and do 100+ damage on a monster with 180 health, and you're like, well, this will last 2 rounds. Guess what? Scribble, scribble, scribble. Now it has 300 health. And you can kind of bluff your way through it. I think some people will listen to that now and they will disagree with that, because some people like playing the game with hard rules and playing it as it is. And I agree that there's a time for that, but also I think that there's a time to create, because I play for a story. I play for drama and conflict and resolution, and I think there's some times where you can tweak stuff on the back end on the fly to go, this is too hard an encounter, or this is too easy an encounter. I want to hit that sweet spot where it's challenging but doable. So yeah, I think that's a really good tip for anyone out there who is trying to create tense, memorable, action-packed moments. It's okay if it's too hard at first for you to go, well, maybe he does 2 attacks instead of 3. Or to say, well, they just knocked out half his health in 1 round. Maybe he has a few more hit points, so he can last at least 1 more round.
Yeah, and sort of side related to that, I suppose, as well. It's something that I do often enough, not super often, but if I feel it's necessary and warranted, I'll do it. I'd imagine it's something you might do as well. I'm not sure, because I tend to not ask you about behind the screen stuff because I'm playing.
Well, yeah.
But if someone hasn't gotten a killing blow in a while, and they're next in the initiative, and it's not like a story boss, it's just a fight, or like a particularly you come across a giant, or you come across something impressive, something that if whoever kills it, it's going to be a moment. If a particular player hasn't gotten a moment to shine recently, and they're next in the initiative order, and so the person who actually kills it has killed something recently, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's a very heavy hit, and I'll give it a cool description to make that player feel good about that attack.
Yeah.
And then I'll go, and he's just hanging on, and I'll say, like, yeah, he has 1 hit point left now. And then I'll go to the next person I want to like give a little shine to.
To give them, yeah. And it's sometimes the stuff, like, I've done that occasionally. Mostly if it's a story or boss thing, it's like, this is my nemesis, but what if the person just before you in initiative order gets the final hit? Sometimes I might do that, where I'm like, oh, they're so close, they have 3 hit points left. And which I don't do it all the time. And I don't think there's much wrong with that, because it's not like you're breaking the game. That person was dead anyway. You're just giving the player who wants this person dead, who they are the nemesis of this person. You're just giving them the satisfaction of being able to kill the person that they want to kill, and I think that can be good from a story perspective, because it's, I don't know, if in Return of the Jedi, Han Solo showed up and shot the Emperor or Darth Vader, and Luke didn't get to do anything, it'd be kind of like, well, thanks, Han. I mean, I'm glad he's dead now, but at the same time, Luke was kind of meant to do that whole thing, you know? This wasn't really your arc. What the hell are you doing here?
It's like Arya killing the Night King in Game of Thrones. Like, the entire story builds Jon Snow to be the person who takes him out, and then Arya kills him.
Yeah. And then Arya, don't get me wrong, drop the knife.
Awesome.
Great move.
Awesome. But
yeah, totally. It's exactly that. And I think sometimes it's good to subvert expectations, but you don't want to be Ryan Johnson about it, where you're subverting expectations just for the sake of it.
It's probably a good thing we did that in like episode 3 rather than like episode like 50 when we have more people watching.
Immediately lose half of the Star Wars fan base.
No, you just get eviscerated in the comments. I meant, oh god, I mentioned Game of Thrones. Oh no.
Yeah, for what it's worth. I actually, after having I had a thing with Rian Johnson after Last Jedi, but then when I actually saw Knives Out, I'm like, you know what? He's fucking good, because Knives Out's a great movie and you should totally watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's some good stuff about bosses. I think just things I was thinking as well, mechanically on the back end, in order to make maybe a regular creature. Maybe you're like, well, I don't have a, like at early levels, challenge rating 1 to 5. There isn't a lot of like super powerful creatures that can be bosses. But what if you want to make one? Take a challenge rating 3 creature and give it a couple legendary resistances or legendary actions, or even reactions, or give it some spell casting if it doesn't already have it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that can buff out a baddie, particularly the legendary stuff, because it's not overpowering them. But when there's nothing that makes a boss seem more like a boss when you cast a spell against them and you're like, oh, fireball, and they fail, but then they legendary resist it because they're the fucking boss, man. There's it makes a point about that particular baddie, that they're not just any old baddie, they're special. They're the captain, they're the general, they're the archmage.
I think
that's an important thing.
I think what could be a cool idea for maybe like the future episode, if people want to see it, is we could maybe go through how to do that. Like we could pull up, we could screen share using D&D Beyond, and maybe you could go through, because I think it'd be better. It'd be better for you to do it because you have more experience in that kind of stuff and kind of editing stat blocks, stuff like that than me. But we could maybe like screen share, and me and you can talk over it while we design some kind of a new monster, or maybe like buff like a wyvern up to legendary or something cool like that.
Let's wait till I get my new keyboard, because I can't type on this one anymore after my Mac. I type on Mac for work, and it's so like shallow. And now I try to do this, and my fingers are caught on the keys constantly. Cool. But Martin, I do believe that's all the time we have for today.
Yeah, I think we had a good old time, though.
I did indeed. I hope everyone enjoyed the story. If you want to hear more, so we got a few of those. I think we can definitely tell some stories from our various campaigns, and I think we got some good tips in there. We can probably expand on it more, but I think we got some good tips in there about running bosses.
Yeah, and if there's anything that, like, I know we kind of covered a lot of ground today, and if there's anything in particular, like say like editing stat blocks, or like designing a boss, or maybe even designing like a story arc to lead to a boss battle that you guys want us to cover in more detail, you can either shoot us a tweet at MicFlayers pod on Twitter. It's also down in the right hand corner of the screen there. It should be right down there. Or you can leave us a comment here. We'll have a look through any kind of comments and see if any ideas for any kind of topics you guys would want us to cover in the future.
Completely stole my outro bit, you bastard. I have a whole thing here. Screw you. I'm doing it anyway.
You can just cut me out the edit.
I do believe that's all the time we have for today. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, stories you'd like to share, or topics you would like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayers pod on Twitter. You can also find our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Martin, where can people reach you or find you?
If you look below, you can see my Twitter handle, which is at so sorry it's over. You can also find me live streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/Mert. And fairly soon I'm actually going to, I was telling Conor about this off the air, but fairly soon I'm actually going to redesign my entire world map and put in new cultures and all that kind of stuff. So if that's something you guys are interested in, you could drop by my Twitch sometime soon, and you'll either be able to see a VOD of that, or I might actually be live streaming it. So that should be a lot of fun.
The audio viewers can't see me, but I was applauding because I'm a big fan of maps. You can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor. That's ZERPOINTCONOR, one N. That's very important. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right,
bye, guys.
Bye.